This is Argyle Gardens. And boy, do I have some stories for you.
I can tell you personally that when I worked at the grocery store and I cashed them out, the receipts were alarming. $13,000 on EBT food, not including the $29,000 that was on EBT cash.
They had
EBT
$30,000 on their EBT cash balance left.
Yes.
And as a cashier, you can see that.
Yes.
And you're like, holy shit, why do you have 30 grand on
It's infuriating.
on one person's card?
It's infuriating.
Good evening. I am Anatoly Anatolisova, and this is Patriots Must Rise. The little clip that was sent to me that I showed you from, I believe, TikTok, is a very frustrated manager of a grocery store that was probably on food stamps at the time, and seeing these massive payouts to illegals just for coming to this country to vote for a Democrat. Okay. Please pay attention to the amount of cash benefits that these individual illegals are getting. $29,000 a month. That's what she's saying. Okay? In other words, in 4 months, you could have 1/4 of a cash payment for a decent house in some markets. And yet at the same time, people like me and you, who might actually be seeking help from the government for SNAP or EBT, who actually pay into the system with our taxes, maybe get 400 if you're lucky, 150 on average. This is wrong, people. The Biden administration, possibly the Harris administration, is preferring illegal immigrants over American citizens. American citizens who have contributed to this country and our society our entire lives. Okay. Now this is part 2 of Argyle Gardens. And it's fitting that somebody sent me this clip, because the story that I'm going to get into is primarily about the immigration problem, or illegal immigration problem. We don't have an immigration problem. We have a problem with illegals. So, to get into the story, I am working as a security guard at this apartment complex called Argyle Gardens. And one of the biggest issues that I have at night is homeless illegals trying to come into the buildings through supposedly invited by their friends to stay the night. What's happening, and there's a lot of misconception about about these laws regarding what do you call it? I can't think of a word on the spot. I'm sorry. Regarding people who are illegally trespassing to live on your property. I'm sorry, I really can't think of the word. But all 50 states are different about how they handle squatters. That's the word. Sorry. How they handle squatters. But none of the states have this instant, you're living here, so now you can live here. That's total bullshit. What the problem is the police don't want to get involved because they believe it's a civil matter. Wrong. It's not a civil matter. Because it's not a civil matter until the required time limit for these squatters to actually live there, for them to actually own the property, is up or nearing expiration. In Oregon, you have to live in these properties for 7 years before you can file to make it your property. And you have to pay taxes on that property during the 7 years. You have to maintain good relations with the POD or PUD and the municipal water. In New York, it's like 30 days, or it's like 30 years. Colorado is 30 years. One of the states, I can't remember, is actually 50 years. So there is no get out of jail free card for these immigrants to move in and squat on this property at all. But my job is to eject them. We can't evict them because that takes a process. But we can eject them, which means that they've been criminally trespassed. They are not allowed on the property again. They have to take it to court, and when they take it to court, the court realizes that they were squatting and they're in trouble. It's a big process. It's a big headache. And a lot of people are trying to make legislature so these squatters laws are eliminated or made much more difficult than they already are. In the states that have the long really long expiration date for them to file for ownership, they still have some kind of rights, which is stupid to me. But somebody told me a story that is really kind of ingenious. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to tell you the story because if it is true and it worked, it might be good advice. I personally believe in going in with guns blazing because they're undocumented. Nobody's going to miss them. And they're trespassing. Dig the grave and nobody cares. But here's the scenario. A young man in his 20s gets a letter from his uncle that was the executor of his mother's estate, saying that the young man, who was living in Colorado at the time as a ski instructor, inherited the property that he grew up on, his mother's house. Finally, I need to backtrack, sorry. He doesn't go down to check it out for any period of time, which, by the way, if you do own property and you don't check on it and maintain it for any period of time, you're probably going to find people living on it. I own property in Oklahoma, but I made an arrangement with the oil companies to put a pipeline on my property. So there's security on that property 24/7. And I have the option to build a structure for a house and stuff later if I choose to. It works out great for me and my family. But that's another story. He didn't check on it. Finally, some woman decides to write him saying, I really like the property on the given address, and the Hall of Records says that you currently own it. Can I lease it for, and she filled in the blank with, I currently have no income and no credit. And he denied her, saying that with no credit and no income, I can't lease to you, I'm sorry. But she decides to move in anyway. One of his friends in California who knew that he inherited the house, saw that this woman was moving in and asked him if he had leased it out. He goes, no. Then you need to get down here because you've got a problem. You've got squatters. He calls up the local authorities. The local authorities say it's a civil matter. He goes, okay. So, after confronting her, she says, I have a lease, and she printed up a fraudulent lease, and the officers just didn't want to deal with it. In their minds, it was a civil matter. Realistically, they were just too lazy to actually figure out whether or not she had a right to be there. Her and her family had a right to be there. Well, the young man decided, okay, I'm going to apply for a position as a ski instructor in Northern California, where the house is. He got the job, and he formulated this plan to start squatting on his own property. He packed a gun, just in case. He waited for the woman and her family to go out for the day, and he moved in. And he waited. They come back, and she's all apologetic, and it worked out in his favor. It probably wouldn't work out most of the time. It'd probably be violent. But the fact is, if she would have taken it to court, he would have had a lot more backing, even in California, that has a 5-year expiration date for her to file for the ownership of the house. But with no income and no ability to pay the lease, she wouldn't be able to pay the property taxes. So she wouldn't be eligible for the assumption of the property. She apologizes profusely, and 2 days later, they're completely moved out. That was a good ejection of a squatter. Very unorthodox, kind of funny. But with liberals in charge, you're always going to have this socialistic attitude that man can't own property, and you have no right to keep people out of your house. You have to defend your property. You have to defend, even if you just inherited it and you're trying to sell it off, you have to go and visit it every now and then, check and see if people are on it. I got an email the other day that somebody tried putting a camper on my property. And I told the security service for the oil company, nobody has permission other than you to be on my property. They got ejected 2 minutes later. And I got footage of it. It was actually kind of funny. The oil companies don't mess around. They called up a tow truck. They put the truck on the bed of a tow truck and towed the trailer with the guy in it. Now, I'm not sure if that's legal. I don't care. The fact is, it got done. You got to have some kind of defense against the squatter. And as we enter this, they call it an election cycle. It's going to be an installment, one way or the other. I actually think that they're probably going to cheat in favor of Donald Trump, basically as an apology to civilized America, because liberal America cheated, and they don't want a civil war. There's going to be a civil war either way. Let's just get real. The political climate of America at this point is saying that if either one gets put into the White House, the other side cheated. And with November 3rd of 2020, the way it went down, nobody is actually going to believe that Kamala Harris was elected at all. Nobody. And Kamala Harris is actually losing ground with even her own constituents because of her idiocracy. We have people squatting all over this country, not because they don't have the money, but because the money is being stolen from them by Democrats. And people know it. So it's going to be an interesting November. And as we come closer to November, I ask you to pray for the soul of our country. When every Democrat politician is running on the platform of saving abortion, you have to know they're evil. You have to. And they're only running on the platform of abortion because they have nothing else to run on. All the other policies are a joke. They know that they're not popular by the people, and they know that the people are running from those policies. So, of course I'm going to say get out there and vote. Get out there and protect the property that you have. But most of all, I'm going to say thank you for your time. I'm Anatoly Yanachalisova. This is Patriots Must Rise. Live free, die well, and to love your neighbor as Christ has loved you. One last thing. This is a completely crowdfunded podcast, and as everybody knows, money gets really tight, especially in the idiocracy of Bidenomics. I could just see what the economy would look like under the retardation of Kamala Harris. But the point being, in the upper right hand corner there's a QR code that is a gateway to ways that you can donate to the podcast, and any help would definitely be appreciated. Thank you.